Early in the morning of December the 8th, 1914, a squadron of German cruisers approached the British Falklands. The fleet is composed of the armored cruisers, the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, along with 3 light cruisers, the Nuremberg, the Dreitzen, and the Leipzig. By 5:30 a.m., the islands appeared in the sight of Vice Admiral Maximilian Graf von Spee, the commanding officer of the squadron. 2 days ago, Spee held a meeting with the captains of the fleet on his flagship, SMS Scharnhorst. The meeting was to discuss the plans for invading the Falklands, which was to first destroy the radio station with naval bombardment, then launch a quick invasion to set fire to the British coal storage. After that, capture the local British governor if possible. Spee sent the Gneisenau and the Nuremberg to scout Port Stanley. He himself will lead the other 3 cruisers to continue their advance north. The recon force first spotted the high radio tower at Hooker's Point. Then they saw a column of smoke from the patrolling armed merchant cruiser HMS Macedonia. About 8:30, they saw a larger column of smoke. The captain of Gneisenau believed that was the British burning up their coal storages and supplies to prevent them from being captured. By 9 a.m., the Gneisenau spotted 4 tripod masts in Port Stanley, which indicated that there may be dreadnoughts in the port. However, according to German intelligence, the Falklands were poorly fortified, and the Royal Navy had no dreadnoughts deployed in the South Atlantic. The information was thought to be a mistake. Therefore, the German squadron continued to advance according to plan, preparing to bombard Port Stanley. The German intelligence was outdated. On the 14th of November, the pre-dreadnought HMS Canopus returned to Port Stanley from the Pacific. She deliberately grounded herself off Port Stanley as a gun platform. In the morning of December the 7th, a Royal Navy Battlecruisers squadron, composed of the Invincible and the Inflexible, led by Vice Admiral Frederick Sturdy, arrived. As the German fleet started their advance to Port Stanley, the British were already alert. An outpost spotted 2 columns of smoke approaching by 7:30. 15 minutes later, HMS Canopus received the alarm. However, precious time was wasted when the Canopus was trying to send message to HMS Invincible, the flagship of Vice Admiral Sturdy. There was no telephone connecting the Canopus to the Invincible, while she can't be seen directly from the Invincible as well. The Canopus raised the signal, "Enemy in sight," which was seen by HMS Glasgow in the port. The Glasgow repeated the message by 7:56 in order for the Invincible to see it. Yet the Invincible did not see the message at all. The Glasgow has to fire one of her guns to draw attention. At the time, the British fleet was not combat ready. The 2 battlecruisers were in the middle of coaling. The Bristol was in the middle of repairing. The Carnarvon and the Glasgow had just finished coaling. Coaling for the Kent and the Cromwell have not started yet. Of the 5 cruisers in the port, only Kent was prepared for combat. After receiving the message just before 8 a.m., Sturdy ordered the fleet to raise steam quickly and then send his crews to breakfast. By 8:10, a series of signals was raised from the Invincible, ordering the Kent to protect the patrolling HMS Macedonia. Then, the other ships were ordered to raise steam and report when their boilers reaches the pressure that were able to propel them to a speed of 12 knots. HMS Canopus, on the other hand, was ordered to fire at the enemy when they enter range. As the Gneisenau and the Nuremberg closed in to bombard the port by 9:20, 2 12-inch rounds of the Canopus landed about 1 kilometer to the 2 ships. Although shocked, the Gneisenau and the Nuremberg prepared for combat. When HMS Kent exited the port, they increased speed and attempted to intercept the British cruiser. However, at this moment, the 2 ships received an order from von Spee. Spee thought that it was no longer possible to launch an assault on the Falklands without a battle. Thus, he ordered the Gneisenau and the Nuremberg to reunite with the flagship, which is 12 kilometers away. The German admiral at the time has no idea of the battlecruisers in the port. However, fighting face-to-face with a pre-dreadnought with 12-inch guns using cruisers should also be avoided. By the time 9:50, The majority of the British ships were ready to start the pursuit of Space Squadron. HMS Bristol had her turbines uninstalled earlier, thus did not leave the port until 11 o'clock. The weather was very much in favor of the British. The sea was calm and the sky had little clouds. Visibility was very good. At 10:20, the signal General Chase was raised from Sturdy's flagship, the Invincible. The two battlecruisers steamed full speed and soon took the lead, surpassing the slower armored cruisers. Although the German squadron was about 15 miles to the southeast, Sturdy knew that the circumstances were in his favor. The German cruisers have been on the high seas for many months. Repair and maintenance were needed for their engines and turbines. Due to this reason, their speed can only climb up to about 20 knots. The British cruiser, in relatively good condition, can steam at a speed of 25 knots. In addition to speed, the British 12-inch guns will deliver a much heavier round compared to the German 210mm and even at a further range. By 11:15, Sturdy believed that the situation was under control. He ordered the Invincible to slow down to 20 knots for the armored cruisers to catch up. Then, at 11:32, he sent the crews to lunch. However, by 12:20, the armored cruisers were still yet to catch up, and there was a distance about 10 miles between the two squadrons. Sturdy decided to launch the attack using the two battlecruisers. Then, he ordered the two ships to increase speed. Around 12:50, the signal "Engage the enemy" was raised, and by 12:55, the Inflexible opened fire at the Leipzig at the range 16,500 yards. The first salvo from the British ships are a few thousand yards short. By 13:10, the British had closed into a range about 13,000 yards. Von Spee decided to give his light cruisers a better chance of escaping, as he ordered the armored cruiser Scharnhorst and Gneisenau to make a turn to port side and engage the British battlecruisers. The three light cruisers were ordered to leave formation and try to escape. At 13:30, the cruisers opened fires on the British. As the German cruisers closed in, their rounds became more and more accurate. Their third salvo straddled the Invincible. Since the British guns outranged the ones on the German ships, they would be able to reach the German cruisers at a safe range. Therefore, Sturdy decided to keep a certain distance from the German cruisers. He led the squadron to a hard portside turn, making their course parallel with the German cruisers. The two sides engaged broadsides for about 30 minutes. At 13:44, the Invincible was hit by the Scharnhorst. To prevent his ships from being severely damaged, Sturdy ordered the fleet to turn, increasing the distance between them and the enemy. During this stage of battle, the British battlecruisers fired over 200 rounds of 12-inch shells, yet the result was quite disappointing. The wind carried the thick funnel smoke towards the German ships, hiding them from sight. This terrible visibility made the observation of shell splashes and hits quite difficult as well. Out of the 200 shells, only 4 scored hits. The Invincible scored 3 hits on the Gneisenau, and one of the shells pierced through the armor deck and made its way into an ammunition magazine, which was quickly flooded to prevent further damage. The other hit was the only hit on the Scharnhorst, which was fired from the Invincible. On the other hand, the German guns were fast and accurate. However, they hardly did any damage on the British battlecruisers. At 14:05, Vice Admiral von Spee led the fleet south, hoping the smoke clouding the British battlecruiser would temporarily hide his movements. He tried to play with for a time, hoping to encounter some bad weather, which would help his fleet escape. This action increased the range to 17,000 yards, but soon enough, Sturdy realized that the Germans are attempting to escape. Therefore, he ordered the battlecruisers to increase speed and make the turn south. By 14:45, the range had again reduced to 15,000 yards. The British battlecruisers made a portside turn for better firing angle of their turrets. Then they resumed fire. A few minutes later, von Spee gave up the attempt to escape. He also ordered a turn port, and then started an intense broadside exchange with the British. The Invincible was hit several times. However, her armor held up, thus received little damage. As the range shortened, the British guns became more and more accurate. The Shanghos and Gneisenau were hit repeatedly. Although the thick smoke generated by the funnels and the guns clouded the sights of both sides, the Gneisenau was still hit below the waterline. The shot resulted in the flooding of 2 boiler rooms. At 15:15, Sturdy ordered the 2 battlecruisers to make another portside turn, bringing his ships to the windward of the German vessels, in order to be clear of the funnel smoke. During the turn, the Invincible's stern was hit by 2 8.2-inch shells fired by the Scharnhorst, but again, she did not suffer any significant damage. Von Spee responded by ordering the 2 cruisers to make a turn as well, bringing the less damaged starboard side guns into action. The battle became more intense, and fire had been consuming the Scharnhorst for about 45 minutes. Both masts and one of her funnels were lost. The superstructure and the deck fittings were largely destroyed. Through the large holes on her side, one could see the flames devouring her ship's interior. Despite the growing damage caused by the British guns, the Scharnhorst's starboard side guns continued to fire for a while. About 16 o'clock, Sturdy signaled to the Scharnhorst, asking her to surrender, yet received no answer. By 16:04, with her bow half submerged and her battle flag still flying, the Scharnhorst began listing to port, and 13 minutes later, she sank, carrying Vice Admiral von Spee and all her 800 crews with her to the bottom of the ocean. Before the Scharnhorst sank, von Spee sent a final message to the Gneisenau: "Try to escape if your engines are still intact." However, the fate of the Gneisenau was certain. In the next 1.5 hours, she was ravaged by the Invincible, Inflexible, and the Carnarvon as they closed in from 10,000 yards to 4,000. Yet, she continued to return fire until the end. After she emptied all her ammunition supplies, at 17:40, she was ordered to be scuttled. About 18 o'clock, the Gneisenau began to sink, finally disappeared under the waves. 190 out of the 300 survivors who jumped into the water were later rescued by the British. To conclude, the result of the battle was already determined before it starts. The advantages of the British battlecruisers were overwhelming. To quote John Roberts from his book, British Battlecruisers 1905 to 1920, the Battle of the Falkland Islands was remarkable for being an almost perfect example of the type of action originally envisaged by Fisher for his new ships. Although the British had relatively poor performance in terms of accuracy, this can be explained by the effect of funnel smoke and continuous maneuvers at long range. In addition, the British battlecruisers under Fisher's ideas were intended to have an advantage in the long-range battles. Thank you for watching. Sources are all in the description. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and share.